So with that, my agenda today is going to talk about defining what security compliance is today. It's kind of expanded, it's constantly changing. How do we keep up with it? Defender for Cloud, talking about regulatory compliance, Microsoft Sentinel. I'll be focused there on the CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification, and how we can use Sentinel to actually reference that, get that regulatory compliance and being able to come back through, and that'll all be done in a demo. But first, I wanted to come talk about a little bit about security governance. That's really where, when we talk about compliance, it really comes down to a governance perspective. With that comes in, as you see here, the business goals and the risks. We talk about architecture with Kyle, and Michael has gone into more detail regarding the MLZ as the landing zone option, and policies. How do we use policy, as I call policies, the rules to play in the playground, and being able to understand setting that up so that we can gain control and oversight of our entire infrastructure across, whether that's hybrid, across cloud, on-prem, or strictly within Azure. And that comes back into security posture management. When we're looking at that security posture management, what is that? It's the continuous discovery of being able to get that information on demand. What is actually out there? Not that there's a server in the closet somewhere, but actually getting that near real-time information at our fingertips so that we can start making good decisions and mitigating our risks upfront. Continuous improvement, you're constantly going to be shifting, whether that's migrating from coming into the cloud using IaaS, a lift and shift, then transitioning perhaps to when you're looking at it for modernizing your applications and your databases, and then figuring out, going back through an iterative process of being able to divide policy-driven governance to be able to consistently get that execution that consistently provides those rules to play in the playground and being able to mitigate risk before they happen. And that comes back into compliance and reporting. So Microsoft has a couple of few tools at our fingertips to help us with the compliance and reporting. The first I call out is the Service Trust Portal. That's a great reference when you're looking for what compliance that we have already built in, or potentially coming out, what services are provided from a compliance perspective. And we circle through, it goes different ways, but you can use Sentinel from a SIEM perspective. Sentinel does do both SIEM and SOAR, but from a compliance perspective, we're looking at it from the security event management. How are we doing from that perspective, being able to collect all those security from all the resources, all that data coming in, and being able to filter that through to be able to bring up those anomalies that come in, including compliance. And then you have the Microsoft 365 Compliance Manager that also helps us to go through from an O365 or M365 perspective to be able to keep compliance and being able to look at that from your overall organization, SharePoint, Mail, OneDrive, all that's going to come into there. And then also your Microsoft Defender for Cloud. That's going to give you your policy and your the posture protection, and we'll get into that. But being able to provide truly a compliance, being able to get that actual security posture management viewpoint on demand. So let's talk about that. So while Defender for Cloud, we talk about it, continually assess, secure, defend, understanding what the different tool sets actually bring to the table, when to use which one works for you. I'll demonstrate both Defender for Cloud and Sentinel here shortly, but just wanted to give you an aspect of what you can do. So not only are we continuously assessing from a compliance standpoint, but then implementing things to make us more secure, getting that insight, the recommendations that are built in, not just from Microsoft, but from CIS, from we have the also NIST 853 and other industry standards that are coming in and making these security recommendations. Sentinel, as I mentioned, the purpose for here, we're collecting that security data. We're looking to detect, get those threats, investigate and respond. But from that perspective, it provides that cloud native theme, being able to collect all that data and being able to help facilitate the other three actions to be able to help you and your environment and your SOC or your security engineers to be able to provide that information to you up front. So here comes the demo. So let's go through that. That's my favorite part. Let me bring this out. I'll stop sharing that piece here. Drag this over. So here we have what we call Microsoft Defender for Cloud. If you haven't seen it, you can go through, type it up here in that search bar. It's going to come up and being able to populate. And for today's demonstration, I'm going to be focused on regulatory compliance. We can get that here from our overview dashboard, which kind of breaks everything out. And these are going to reflect the lowest compliance regulatory standards. Please don't look at that. This is a lab environment. I tear down and build back up constantly, showing customers probably what you shouldn't do and how to improve that score. And diving into regulatory compliance, I know one of the folks in the chat had mentioned, how do I understand FedRAMP and a compliance standpoint? This is where you would go to understand FedRAMP, NIST 853. They also have CMMC. Let's take a look at what compliance standards are available. When you're looking at Defender for Cloud, it is onboarded by subscription. So what I mean by that, when I come back through, I'm looking at it from a subscription perspective and being able to click through and see what security policies are applied to my subscriptions. They can also be applied at a management group level. So if you're looking from an architect standpoint, being able to enforce those standards audits so nobody can go and change them unless they have access of what we call at that scope, that management group level, that subscription. And as you can see, I have deployed a few of them. I have subscriptions here. Those are my defaults. This is going to be that Azure, well, Defender for Cloud default, being able to give me some recommendations. It's going to audit my environment on demand and being able to track my information. So these are the current ones that I've deployed so far. That benchmark is something that we have a recommendation, again, just multiple industries, not just Microsoft, CIS, NIST. It's a compilation of different recommendations coming across. I do have the CIS 1.1 as well as the 1.3. And then we look at the different DoD, NIST 853, and you can see I am inheriting this at my management group. And why is that important? Again, coming back through, nobody can touch that unless they have rights at a management group, and that comes back into that compliance, the security compliance, implementing policy at the management group levels, implementing or subscriptions, even resource groups, RBAC, making sure my RBAC is my role-based access control is in place so that I can enforce this compliance as far as even just auditing. And you can see here CMMC level 3 as well as FedRAMP moderate, NIST 853, and Azure CIS 1.3, as I mentioned, DoD, and we can add more standards. So I had a few added there, and that's where I've gone through when testing, so I can quickly add any standard. We'll add the old NIST 853 standard coming through, and being able to see how quickly this is to deploy. Let's go through review and create. I think I might have needed to set something there as far as being able to come back in and being able to look at this from an auditing perspective. All of these are policies that are going to help me maintain my environment so that it's quite a few, and from being able to audit my environment for ownership, for identity, for networking, for backup and disaster recovery, all these support NIST 853. So as we go through, just showing you how quick, I'm going to go ahead and create that, and we'll let that run while we run back over here. This will pop up in a minute. Oh, that was quick. And being able to see how that policy has been enabled. So let's go back to my Defender for Cloud. And now I can actually go through and I can look and see, I have a list of regulatory compliance here that can come back in. And this SP 853 R4 will populate. It probably takes a second to catch up, but it is available now in my environment and I can query for that against all the regulatory compliance. So here I'm actually going to go back through. I'm going to focus on NIST 853 because I know that's a lot of our government customers are something that they're looking for. And as we look through, here's all the controls where I can actually take my NIST 853 and map the controls over. And these controls, give it a second to expand, coming back in and being able to map that. How am I doing? What is my compliance? How am I able to do this? And you can see here those control details. Let's open that up and see what that does. Maybe it's giving it a second. And we'll come back to that in a minute while it still thinks. And then being able to see if it's grayed out, it's either not applicable. I don't have anything there in there yet, or it has, it's coming. So that's something that comes through. There we go. And now I can look at the additional content and actually pulling up on demand. Here's my environment, being able to pull this in and being able to filter through and actually help me to go map this out. And I map directly back to NIST 853. And I can actually go through more context. There's you see your AC2. When I come back here, you're matching that back up with that control so I can take that over and understand. So then I get a lot of questions here. Remember, we talked about the different policies that support. Here we can see there we have resource compliance status that actually comes through. When you look at it from that perspective, these are all the individual policies that are coming through, and it is a shared model. The cloud is a shared model. And for this, they're saying these are the customer responsibility, and it's up to us to come back through. Unfortunately, I have some few ones green, but if I had coming back through, these are all the policies that are coming back in. So with that, I wanted to highlight the compliance policies. You can download the reports, being able to come back through, being able to select that NIST 853 and definitely export that out either in a CSV, which your security engineers would appreciate, or versus the PDF file, which gives a more high-level view and your management. So really quick, I'm going to flip back over. I mentioned I was going to do Defender for Cloud. When I look here, I want to highlight actually Sentinel. That changed it. Let me go back. So here's Sentinel. Let's go ahead and leave this out. Sentinel is not onboarded by subscription. It's onboarded by your log analytics workspace. And here we have a huge screen that gives me a lot of data coming in, different data points. But really what I want to highlight here for this particular purpose, sticking to our compliance, is our new features under the Content Hub. And here I'm going to type in CMMC. I actually have a content, what we call a solution. It's going to deploy all the analytic rules, the playbook, and the workbook. So I don't have to go individually and map that out. I can actually deploy that and have it come through, and it will be done in seconds versus hours. I've already deployed it just to help facilitate for this particular one, but we can do a deep dive at some other time if you're interested. But the workbooks come through, and I'm going to highlight this and what this looks like. These are my workbooks coming in. I see this is already deployed. So there I can go and actually view this workbook coming through. And it does take a second, so I'm going to pause there for a minute. Where I can see I can set my subscriptions workspace. I can set the time range. I'm going to reduce this time range because it's going to chunk through a lot of data. And we're going to say the last 24 hours instead of the last 30 days, but it can be customizable. And the cybersecurity model certification workbook will actually go through and highlight. These are all, again, my controls, the different compliance, regulatory compliance controls. I'm going to just pick a couple of these just for the sake, and I'm going to look at the section. I'm going to assess my current environment. And you can see here, you can actually select different maturity levels as you're coming in and being able to go back through. We'll give it a second to chunk on it. Let me come back up here. Let's make sure I select my workspace correctly so it doesn't have to filter in. And we'll come back and set those. So if you're thinking about this, as far as I have multiple subscriptions, you can absolutely set that up so that you have those subscriptions and pull that information up. Let's go ahead and refresh this. So while that's populating, there's a couple of other features. You can save it. You can repurpose. Of course you did. You can repurpose the different KQL. Everything underneath the hood here is not specific to Sentinel. It's specific to Azure Monitor and KQL queries underneath. So from that perspective, you can absolutely edit this, repurpose those into your own, and you can also pin to your dashboards. So while that is processing, I just wanted to highlight this button here. So if you're making your own dashboards, I can now have a private or shared dashboard, and I can pin individual sections within this workbook to my own dashboard and customize this a little bit better. And I think that the extended thresholds, you are not complying with me today. So let's go back through. We'll select all the sections and we'll come back here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and think that we are close to time. Is that correct, Karina?
That is.
Okay.
We're about 2 minutes out, so one more minute and we can.
Great. So here, yeah, I'll take 30 more seconds. I could talk about this all day long, and actually I do, so that's great. But I'll try to keep it short. And now you can kind of filter through what those recommendations are for your CMMC. Here's the resource details that give me information. And now I have an overall picture actually coming through and giving me good data from a CMMC. How can I become even more compliant? There's a great getting started guide here, so that's something. And as you add more control sections there, access control, access management, it's going to give you the same type of information there so that you can get that one-stop shop picture. And as I mentioned, I'm just giving a subset of this information because it does take a little bit to filter through all that data and being able to come and then provide that from that perspective, giving me my assessment. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you. I'm going to switch back over. We're going to go back to our slides. And then I will turn it over to Karina for closing. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Sherri. This was great. Want to thank all the speakers again for volunteering your time and inviting everyone to come back on March 30th for our next meetup. We're already designing some great agendas. If you have any kind of speaker ideas or thoughts on that, please let us know. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next month. And we'll sign off. Thank you.